Imagine looking at the blueprints of a skyscraper. Even if you aren't an architect, there is a comforting, visible logic to it, you know?
Right.
You see the massive steel girders, you see where the load-bearing walls are placed, and you inherently understand why the building stands up. The engineering is just right there in front of you. But when you put on your headphones and listen to a piece of music that completely wrecks you emotionally, whether it's a Bach cello suite or a Beatles album, that blueprint is entirely invisible.
Yeah, we just don't see it.
Exactly. For centuries, we've treated the underlying rules of music as either this mystical, untouchable stroke of genius or, I don't know, a stuffy, powdered wig rulebook that classical musicians follow and rock stars break.
Which is a beautiful illusion, but ultimately it's just an illusion. The architecture is absolutely there. We feel the tension and the release of those girders, even if you can't see them.
Today, we're going to prove to you that those musical blueprints aren't just metaphors. They are literal, multi-dimensional geometric shapes that your brain is trapped inside. Welcome to the deep dive.
It's a fun one today.
It really is. We are exploring excerpts from a fascinating theoretical text called A Geometry of Music, Harmony and Counterpoint in the Extended Common Practice by Dmitri Tomatsko. And the mission today is to completely redefine what tonality actually means. We're breaking it out of the stuffy classical rulebook to show how classical music, jazz, rock, and modern minimalism all share the exact same hidden geometric toolkit.
To really understand this, well, you have to look at the author's own background. It frames the entire conflict we're unpacking here.
Right.
Because Tomatsko didn't start out analyzing classical scores with a magnifying glass. He grew up playing electric guitar. He was obsessed with the kaleidoscopic production of the Beatles, the ferocious rhythmic energy of Stravinsky's Rite of Spring, and 1980s art rock.
Just a total mix of everything.
Exactly. To him, all of this was just music. It was a wide-open universe where different genres were just different dialects of the same language.
Then he gets to college, right? He goes to formally study composition, and he hits this massive academic wall. His teachers inhabited a completely different universe.
Oh, totally.
To the academic establishment back then, traditional tonality, the stuff that makes rock, jazz, and classical music sound pleasing or logical to most of us, was considered completely unserious. It was viewed as illogical, just a relic. The only music they respected was highly dissonant, cerebral, atonal music, specifically the 12-tone stuff developed by composers like Arnold Schoenberg.
Right. They believed serious music shouldn't be governed by whether a chord sounds good to the ear, but whether it adhered to this complex mathematical system where every single note is treated completely equally. It's an incredibly alienating environment for a young musician who just wants to write something beautiful or driving.
I can imagine.
But Tomatsko didn't just drop out and say, well, music is just about feeling, man. He dug deeper into the math. He wanted to prove that modern tonality isn't an uneducated step backwards from avant-garde atonality. It is a rich, mathematical continuation of the past.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because before we can start mapping out the geometry of music, we first have to agree on what tonality actually is, moving beyond that crude tonal versus atonal debate.
Right, because tonality isn't just one thing. The text lays out 5 universal features that make music sound structured or tonal. And what's fascinating is separating the biological from the cultural.
Let's do biology first.
Okay, so the first feature is conjunct melodic motion. That simply means melodies tend to move by short, step-by-step distances rather than making massive, jagged leaps. And the reason for this is tied directly to human biology.
Because your eardrum is essentially a one-dimensional system, right? It's just a membrane moving back and forth.
Exactly. That is incredibly meager data. From that simple vibration, your brain has to computationally conjure up a rich, 3D auditory scene.
Like separating out a voice from traffic noise.
Yes. And to pull off that miracle, the brain relies on shortcuts. It groups nearby pitches together. So if you hear a sequence of notes close together in pitch, your brain says, that's one person singing. If you hear wildly jumping pitches, your brain gets confused and assumes it's hearing 3 or 4 different sources. So short melodic steps are basically required by our ears.
That makes perfect sense for a single melody. But what about the chords underneath?
That's where we cross into cultural habits. The second and third features are acoustic consonants preferring restful harmonies and harmonic consistency.
Meaning the chords in a passage structurally resemble each other?
Exactly. If a pop song is playing major and minor chords, they belong to the same family. Now, harmonic consistency is highly specific to Western culture. Plenty of non-Western music doesn't use changing chord progressions at all.
Okay, so we have conjunct melodies, restful consonants, and consistent chords. Are these five features basically just a recipe? Like salt, fat, acid, heat? Can a composer just leave one out?
They are a recipe, yes, but you need the last two ingredients. The fourth is limited macro harmony, which means using a small reservoir of, say, 5 to 8 notes over a given time span.
Like sticking to a major scale.
Right, and the fifth is centricity, where one note acts as a home base or goal.
What happens if we strip all five away? Is it just noise?
Well, the text mentions a perceptual experiment.
Yeah.
If you generate completely random notes, it sounds chaotic. If you add just stepwise motion, it sounds slightly more ordered. Add all five, and you get recognizable music.
Oh, wow.
But strictly 12-tone, atonal music, intentionally avoids these features. And the psychological effect, to a typical listener without training, is remarkably similar to hearing random computer-generated notes. It fights our biology.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Now that we have our five ingredients, we have to look at how they interact, because you can't just mix and match them freely, right?
No, there is a massive catch. They severely constrain each other. There is an interplay between harmony, the chords, and counterpoint, the melodies. Let's contrast two examples from the text.
Okay.
First, the C major triad, C, E, and G. The notes are spread far apart. Because of that, you actually can't make a smooth conjunct melody using only those notes. You'd have to jump.
Right.
But because they are spread out and evenly divide the octave, you can easily shift them to a totally different chord, like F major. It's incredibly efficient for voice leading.
Voice leading being how one chord smoothly shifts into the next.
Precisely. Now contrast that with a chromatic cluster, say 3 adjacent piano keys bunched up together. You can easily make a burbling conjunct melody staying perfectly inside that single static chord, but you cannot smoothly transition that cluster to another cluster further up the keyboard without awful jarring leaps.
It's like stepping stones across a river. A major chord is like stones spaced far apart. You have to use passing tones to walk between them smoothly. But the cluster is like standing on a single big rock. You can shuffle your feet around smoothly, but you can't easily jump to the next rock.
That is a perfect analogy.
Does this mean the very structure of the chord dictates the genre of the music?
It absolutely does. This is why classical music features moving chord progressions, while 1960s avant-garde music, like Little Giddy, features static, burbling cluster harmonies. The geometry of the chord dictates its potential.
So those are the local constraints, but we need to zoom out to see how these exact same principles scale up to structure entire pieces of music. Because music isn't just three notes in a vacuum.
Right. To do that, we separate three concepts: scale, macroharmony, and centricity. Think of a scale as a musical ruler measuring distance. CDE is 2 steps on a diatonic scale, but 4 steps on a chromatic scale.
And the macroharmony is the total collection of notes used over a span of time.
Exactly. And centricity is the emphasized center. You could have a centerless diatonic scale or a highly centered chromatic scale. But the real magic is in hierarchical voice leading.
Modulation. Changing keys.
Yes, modulation is just voice leading on a macro level. The text uses a specific example. Clementi in the 18th century changes one note, G to G sharp, to smoothly modulate from D major to A major. Then Debussy does the exact same single note shift in a modern 20th century piece to move between exotic scales.
Wait, so music is basically a Russian nesting doll. The way individual notes step to form a new chord is the exact same mechanism as entire scales stepping to form a new key.
Yes. If we connect this to the bigger picture, this self-similarity is the genius of the extended common practice. Whether it's Clementi in the 18th century or Debussy and minimalists in the 20th century, they're all exploiting the same fundamental rules of distance.
Let's get visual, because if music is fundamentally about distance and symmetry, how do we actually visualize the map that these composers are navigating?
Well, we have to move from linear pitch space to circular pitch class space. Because of octave equivalence, the fact that a C is a C, regardless of how high or low it is, musical space loops back on itself like a circle.
Like a clock face.
Exactly. On this circle, transposition shifting keys is simply rotation. And inversion turning a melody upside down, like Bach did, is simply reflection, like a mirror.
So it's not just a simple circle of fifths anymore, because the text says mapping all possible voice-leading paths requires a 3D 40-chord lattice. What does this 40-chord lattice actually look like?
It's mind-bending. Mathematically, it forms the interior of a twisted triangular two-torus,
Which is
essentially a triangular donut.
a twisted donut.
Yes. And it means that 19th century composers like Chopin and Wagner weren't just being rebellious or illogical with their intense chromaticism. They were systematically exploring the complex, highly logical pathways of this triangular donut.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? Having revealed this incredibly complex geometric math underlying music, do you, the listener, need to understand any of this math to enjoy the music?
This is a great point. The text contrasts the linguistic model of music with a magic trick model. The linguistic model assumes music as a language, and the listener's job is to decode the composer's syntax.
Right, so if you don't catch the complex structural patterns, you've supposedly failed to understand the piece.
Exactly, but the author strongly rejects this, proposing the magic trick model instead. A composer is a stage magician using geometric tools and symmetries to induce feelings of tension, relaxation, terror, or ecstasy.
I completely agree. If music were truly a language, missing a structural chord change would be like failing to hear the word tiger in the sentence, "There is a tiger nearby." It would be disastrous. But in music, you can miss the underlying syntax entirely and still weep at the beauty of a symphony.
This raises an important question about the elitism of some avant-garde music. Some modern composers, like Milton Babbitt, intentionally wrote music only other specialists could understand, abandoning those universal five features.
Right, they expected you to do the math in your head.
Yeah. But the best music, the true extended common practice, works on multiple levels. It offers a glorious surface illusion for the casual listener, while hiding brilliant geometric math for the experts to admire.
So to wrap this deep dive up, tonality isn't a rigid classical rule. It's a flexible manipulation of human perception, geometry, and symmetry that unites Bach, the Beatles, and jazz.
It's all connected.
It really is. Which leaves me with a final thought for you to ponder. If music is a magic trick designed to exploit the specific biology of our ears and our brain's love of patterns, what other magical experiences in your daily life, from the layout of your favorite app to the pacing of your favorite movie, are just beautiful illusions hiding a twisted mathematical donut underneath? Keep your ears open.